Hello. Hello. Um,
Hello, Ajay.
yeah. Hi, Sai. Do you want to uh, open my video?
No, give me a minute.
All right. So,
okay, Ajay. Shall we start?
yeah, sure.
Okay. Let's start with a brief introduction about yourself, the skills that you've been working on, and what kind of projects you worked on, and what kind of roles you handled in those projects. Something like this.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. First of all, I'm Ajay Bhargav. I in 2018 I started my own company. It's called T18 Innovations. We started it's a startup that was we were initially service oriented. And soon after that, we also entered into the SaaS market. Our very first product we built was called Vegetable. It's a restaurant management system, and it was built using Angular, PHP, and MySQL initially. But then we soon shifted to React Native, Mongo Express Node, right? So, and since then, most of the projects that we've handled, most of the projects that we worked on have been on React Native, MERN stack, right? And I was in charge of making technical decisions. I was heavily involved in the development as well. While I was at the Innovations, we had a couple of big clients from the UK, from US, right? One of the major projects that I was involved in was called Doctors Pharmacy. It's a pharmacy management application that's targeting the pharmacies that are based in the US. So what it does is it'll make communication between doctor's office, the pharmacy, and the insurance companies easier, and makes the life of the patients a bit easier. Basically, they don't have to carry over their whole documentation everywhere they go. And so that's one of the major projects that I worked on. Soon after that, I left the Agent Innovations and joined Tamber Interfaces, where I've been working for the last 1 year. And so after I joined Tamil Interfaces, we have two products. One of them is a web development, web application. The other one is a mobile application. I took charge of both of the applications. And yeah, so we both of the applications use MERN stack. For the web, it's React. For the mobile, it's React Native. Um, and yeah, that's basically it. Here, I actually oversee. I take ownership of both the applications. I oversee development, deployment, maintenance of the applications, and all of that as well. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's basically what.
Okay. So, so total, how many years you have been into the development work?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah,
And
and I've been working with MERN stack ever since.
okay, in this all these 4 years is with Menstack only.
MERN stack, and then I have also used a couple of other technologies. For instance, we tried out Django. We tried out. We also were involved in a game development project with Unity Game Development, Unity Game Engine. things like that. But heavily we were working with MERN stack. Most of the applications that we built were using MERN stack.
Okay, leave about main stack. Everything, I mean, JavaScript.
Yeah,
All 4 years is on JavaScript.
JavaScript, that's right.
Okay, okay, okay. So, let's say in this all 4 years, uh, how much percentage you will divide of your front end work and the back end work?
I'd say 60 to 65% is in the front end. The other 40% is in the back end.
Okay,
Yeah.
and back end everything is on the mostly Node.js,
Yeah, that's right. Node.js.
and the front end is React and React Native.
React Native, some Angular as well, but not that much.
Okay, okay. So you are familiar with ES6.
Yeah.
So what and all features or functionalities of ES6 we have used?
Um, the most common functionality that I use is arrow functions. Right. That's one of the most commonly used syntax that I use with ES6. Um, well, um, that's mostly because I use React, and in React I also prefer functional components and um, functional components versus. I mean, there's some debate between functional components and class components, which are better, but I prefer functional components, and so this is one of the most common feature that I actually kind of use um, in ES6.
Okay. Any other?
Mm, I mean, you know, the the other most common use is I'd say the use of let and const, right? To define variables. That's for scoping and things like that. So we don't have to confuse between global scope and the block scope, right? So that as well.
Okay. So what
And
is the
some features using and some of the features of for instance object optional chaining. Have if you know what that, yeah,
okay, okay.
right, yeah.
So what is the difference like no between the arrow function and the normal the function with function key?
Right. So the basic, the fundamental difference is the scope, right? For a function, for a method, the scope is defined. The internal scope of the function is defined as whatever object it is attached to. Whereas for a for an arrow function, the scope is always the global window or the global variable or the global scope, basically. If you're using Node, it's a global object. If you're in the browser, it's a window object. It's the window, basically. This refers to the window, and so that's one of the most important differences between those two.
Okay. Any other differences?
Well, there's also the the difference between how they behave. For instance, hoisting works differently with the normal function key as opposed to when you're defining an arrow function. Because arrow function is basically an assignment to a variable, which doesn't actually happen until the line is actually the line is read, right? But whereas a normal function, whereas a function defined using the function keyword, you can actually use it before its definition, before its assignment. Basically, yeah, you can actually use a function built using the function keyword. You can use it before its definition, before you define it. Whereas you cannot do that with other functions. You have to have the function defined before you can use it.
So no way you cannot use arrow functions before declaration.
before declaration.
Hmm. See,
I
I
mean,
understood
you
that.
can, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I understood that. Okay, the function, if you use with the function key,
Mhm.
you can use even before the declared, right?
Sorry,
If you
I
use the
could hear you.
function, the
Mhm.
regular function, you can use that function even before the it's declared, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And arrow functions we cannot use before declaration.
Um, I mean, yeah, basically.
Yeah. So is there is no way even you can make an arrow function to use it before declaration?
Well, I'm
Okay.
thinking, but I don't know of any way that you can do it.
In general, how you write a arrow function?
Yeah, I use let some variable name or let function name equal to the arrow function syntax. That's how it is.
Okay. What if you use where instead of let?
Where that actually gets you, that actually makes the function a global scope, right?
Oh,
It'll get hoisted, but not the declaration itself, not the assignment itself. That is not a function. What is hoisted to the global scope? That's just a declaration, not definition. It's not
yes.
defined, it's not assigned yet. So as long as the definition is not happening, that's as far as the assignment is not happening, that variable is still undefined. And so in my opinion, you cannot actually use a function even if you use a var keyword.
Okay. On the same thing,
Mhm.
I am sending a code snippet in the chat. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, 1 second. I want you to tell me what will be the output of this one.
Okay.
So if I call this function with flag value as a true, what will be the output?
Um, okay. So what do you want to find out? What's the value of sum, or what does it do?
So what the function will return if I call the function with
Or
flag value?
what the function returns? What the function returns would be 400.
Why?
Sorry,
Why?
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 I see. So variable, whenever you use a keyword variable, and you redeclare the variable with the same variable with the keyword where,
Mhm.
the function, the program that the JavaScript does not actually differentiate between those two. Those all of those variables are the same variable, and all of them are posted to a single declaration at the top of the file. And
Mhm.
so basically any block scope, any scope that you would define a variable in, it's hoisted to the global scope, and multiple declarations are actually merged to a single hoisted variable. And so any definition you're making is basically a redefinition, basically, right? So
Okay.
you're reassigning the number, the same variable. So the last reassignment is where sum equals 400, and so it'll return 400.
Okay. So you might have used many packages, right? So what
I'm
you
sorry, there's some disturbance in the background. I couldn't hear you properly.
what you have used for package management,
Hmm.
NPM?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm. I have
which
used.
you have used both.
I used both of them. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, what is the difference between these two?
The difference, I mean, they have their own registries. That's the other thing. I mean, um, the most important difference I can think of is basically NPM actually, does it one by one,
Mhm.
whereas Yarn installs all of them, simultaneously, together, basically. When we're when we hit, let's say we've cloned the repository from GitHub or anywhere else, and we have a package.json, or we have a package.json. What npm does is it'll go through the dependencies and installs all of them one by one, while yarn does that all at once.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other differences?
um that's one of the major ones that I can think of. The other differences, I mean, they have their own log files. That's not much of a difference. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think, I cannot say anything. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But the first statement is wrong, the different registries.
Registries, I see. Okay.
I mean, both use same. And is just a command line tool, which is
Oh, that
just
just takes off of the npm
yes.
registry.
At the end, it is again gets the same from same code.
Hmm.
Even it also just actual npm packages itself, but the
All right.
usage is the command line tool is basically the
Different.
same.
Got it.
Yeah. So you can that is the main reason you can convert any project initially which was using npm to yarn.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Okay. So tell me no difference between the asynchronous and non-blocking functions.
Asynchronous and non-blocking.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I'm thinking asynchronous is basically, it has something to do with basically time, right? There's a process uh, that we're waiting for, and there's a result that comes in, and you do something with the result after a time, or after some time, basically. That's what comes to mind when you say asynchronous. Whereas, I mean, something, there's a piece of code that actually that is executed after a while, after you wait for something, and you have result, or basically you're waiting for something and then doing something. So that's asynchronous. Whereas non-blocking, it doesn't necessarily mean asynchronous, but that piece of code does not actually block the program from running the subsequent lines.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, you can consider the threads in JavaScript, sorry, Java, or any other multi-threaded languages. They can be considered non-blocking. Whereas in JavaScript, if there's JavaScript cannot have basically non-blocking. It can have asynchronous code.
Okay. So tell me how Node.js exactly different from other platforms or other techs, how it handles the asynchronous?
So it's not just about Node.js, it's also about you know the the way the JavaScript itself is handled, basically. Even in the browser, Node.js in browser behave a lot similarly when it comes to executing. And so the fundamental concept is that of an event loop, right? So everything happens in an event loop, and whenever there's a blocking, whenever there's a blockage, the event loop halts, the event loop stops, and as long as that blockage is not resolved, it doesn't go forward. And so in the event loop, what happens is the code is executed line by line, and every iteration takes care of the code that it needs to run. But if there's an asynchronous code that comes to basically, if it comes across an asynchronous piece of code, what it does is it'll spin up a different process, and it'll create once that process is done, once the calculation or whatever it is, once the API call or anything that returns the actual result, that process will actually queue a task in the event loop. And as soon as the current loop is ending, as soon as current iteration is ending, that a single task is taken from the task queue, and that task is executed, and the event loop starts again. Maybe after a couple of 3, 4, 5, maybe based on the refresh rate of the screen, it executes the screen updates. It actually takes care of the recalculation of styles, the calculation of maybe even request animation frames, right? And it then paints over the screen if there are any updates. And there's also the concept of microtasks as well in the event loop. Microtasks are something. So the main difference between microtasks and tasks is that tasks can only be executed once every only one task can be executed once every event loop at the end of the event loop. Whereas microtasks, they need to be completed before the end of the however many microtasks are scheduled, all of them need to be completed before the end of the current loop. And
Oh,
so, yeah, I mean, I might not have conveyed this properly, but this is the basic structure. The concept of event loop, the concept of tasks, the concept of microtasks.
okay.
And so this is how any asynchronous code is handled. So for instance, if we hit an API endpoint, it'll return a promise, and once the promise is resolved, that the callback that's passed to whether it be a then function, whether you use await async await or any other syntax, once the result is obtained, then it'll process then it'll process the actual um, uh, code in the form of a task.
Okay. What kind of HTTP methods we have used?
Um, Post, put, get, delete.
Okay.
These are the most common ones that I use. I mean, there is also patch, but I haven't used patch that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between post and put?
Post is for actually posting. I mean, post and put actually do both of them carry some data to the backend, right? But post is actually for creating a new entry in the database or anything like that. Whenever there's some new data that's been sent to the backend, um, right? But the put is basically for updating something, right? Well, um, when there's something that you need to update, let's say user is updating their profile name or anything like that, we send the put method. But whenever there's a user that's creating a new user, whenever they're signing up, creating a new account. That's when you send a patch, post request, because you're creating a new entry in the database and all that, right? And so both of them have the ability to carry some data in the form of the method body. Um, and that data can be fetched from on the backend using the request.body. And I mean, we have to use body parsers first, but then yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have used Express, right?
Sorry.
Express.js you have used, right?
Yeah, I have these instructions.
So, and have used any middlewares and stuff?
I have, yeah.
So, okay, can you give me any example and how exactly that, what are the middleware you have written works and what is the purpose?
Yeah, sure. So middleware is basically it's you can it's a set of processes basically that you need, that you want applied to the request body, or any part of the request before actually processing the request itself. um, right. And a middleware in its syntax actually gets both the request and response objects, and a middleware can actually make modifications to both of those request and response objects as it sees fit. For instance, if you want to pass, there's some JSON that's coming in, or XML or any other data format that's coming in, or let's say you're expecting some kind of data that's being transmitted to the backend. You can actually put in a parser for that specific data format, and that'll remove the need for actually passing the data every time there's a request in the request handler, right? So that's what middleware are, and that's just one example of how how to implement middleware, right? But basically, you can actually call them. It's essentially what it boils down to is it's a function that has some that takes in response and request objects as inputs, as arguments, and modifies the response and request objects as it sees fit.
So, what kind of middlewares you have written?
So basically there's authentication middlewares, and the most common thing we use was authentication middleware, right? So we want to make sure if if the request is coming in from the actual user that's registered with us, or somebody else, right? So REST APIs don't actually they're not stateful, so we don't know whether a user is signed in or how long they've been signing in or anything like that. And so every request needs to be, well, at least, high security requests need to be authenticated. And so we have once the user logs in from the front end, from the client side, we send a authentication token, and that token is basically sent back to us in the body, in the headers. uh, so what we did was we actually used a middleware to authenticate that particular token, if that is actually signed in user, or whether, to check also. We actually use expired, a time limited tokens, right? So we can also use that to check if that particular token is expired, or whether that particular token is not even associated with the application, or things like that. So based on that, we can also send back some kind of message, right? Some kind of error code, and then appropriate message can be shown on the front end.
Okay. Okay. Ajay, what I want is I want you to share your screen.
Mhm.
I will be giving a small problem statement. You can use any JavaScript editor online or offline tools like VS Code or any editor if you want.
Okay.
Okay. So the problem statement is basically you need to find the best time to buy and sell a stock. Okay.
Okay.
So you are given a list of stock prices in a
Mhm.
continuous way, like array of prices,
Mhm.
where I defines the day.
Mhm.
Okay, so you can buy and you can sell so that you should get the maximum profit out of it.
Okay.
So let's say you have array of prices, something like this.
Oh, you sent me a chat. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Got it.
Okay. So for example, here, if you buy on the second day with price 1
Mhm.
and sell on the fifth day with the price 6,
Mhm.
you'll get maximum profit of 5.
Okay.
So that's what you need to find at any given array of prices with the day as I iteration.
Mhm.
You need to find the maximum profit you can get.
Got it. Got it. I mean, in okay.
If there is no such scenario where you can buy and sell without any profit, then you should not buy at all. So zero profit.
Okay, so we should give out the profit or the day at which you're buying and selling.
Profit.
So
The
I
profit.
should return. So I'll write a function so that it's taken the
Returns
prices
the
of the arrays.
max profit. Yeah, max profit you can get.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Um, mhm. And let's say the price is always decreasing. So 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And that is the price in subsequent days. Then it should say that there's no way you
Yeah,
can buy.
yeah.
Okay.
Then zero.
Okay. Okay. Got
Then zero is the max you can get on a profit. So zero.
it. Got it. Understood. Um, See, you can just buy on one day and sell the other day. That's all. There's no multiple buying and multiple selling
Yeah.
strategy.
Those are prices are each day. The whole day
Okay.
on I day, the whole price
Mhm.
is the I price given in the array.
Mhm.
So the price changes only when the day changes.
Okay. I mean, the brute force method that I can think of is, um, I'll consider the first day. Let's say I'll buy the stocks on the first day, and then I'll iterate to the remaining array of prices, and I'll see on which day I can sell to get the most profit in that iteration.
Hmm.
Right? If there's no way that I can get a profit if I sell on the first day, it'll still be zero. And I'll go to the next step. I'll go to the next day. So what I'll do is I'll see what I can do if I buy on the second day and iterate through the other days. From third day onwards and see if I can buy on which day to get more profit, right? So that way I can update my maximum profit. right? But this is actually, of the order n square. It will become an order of n square. If you want, I can actually write this up and then maybe optimize it later on, or do you want me to optimize it now?
It's up to you. If you think you can think in and directly you can write the optimized code, you can. Or if you can write the first approach, whatever you are currently aware, you can get the solution. Then
Mhm.
after that, if you want to think to optimize, you can.
Um, okay, let me actually write the code that
Okay. Yeah.
write the approach that I just said. Okay. Okay. So yeah, this is the blue concept that I was talking about. And, should go to response. This is my premise. That's fine. All right. So we got the answer. It's 5.
Okay.
So this is working. But let's say there's also 10 maybe. It's actually return 9. Okay, we got it. All right. The solution is working, but then this is not an ideal case. I mean, this is not an optimized solution. Um, to optimize it, I'm thinking what you can do is hmm. Okay. Need to find the maximum price. Can we keep track of the two numbers, the highest and the lowest prices, um, into variables and just update them as we iterate through the loop, as we loop through the array? Um, okay, okay. Okay. Let's and, mhm, mhm. Okay. I think I have something in mind. Um, Instead of doing all this, what you can instead of doing all this, what we can do is you can have two variables, that is for the maximum price and the minimum price,
Mhm.
and we loop through the array once, right? That's we'll only loop through once, and so for every element, we'll check if that element is less than the current minimum or greater than the current maximum. right? Or if it falls in between those two values. And based on those conditions, we'll update either the minimum value at the minimum price or the maximum price. And so once you're done with the array, we'll have our minimum price and the maximum price. We can just subtract those two to to get the profit, the maximum profit that we're talking about. But the catch here is that if this is not the case, let's say 10 is not there, the maximum price is 7, the minimum price is 1, it should be 6. But since 7 is the first day price and 1 is the second day price, there's no way you can buy in the second day and sell in the first day. So you have to also keep track of the temporal order in which these elements occur. All right, so I'm doing the whole thing here. Let's say that max price. Okay. I'll set max price as 0 and minimum price as 20. So for each we'll do is we'll check if the price is the max price. Then we set max price as the minimum price equals price. But the catch comes where the catch comes is, so we'll set the answer in the first way. Once it comes to the next step, if prices okay. Move to the second day. The first day, both of them are set to 7. Fine. The second day, what has to happen is the minimum price has to be 1. And having no minimum price. One of those minimum price. Oi.
Let's continue, Ajay. You can
Yeah,
think.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is the difference between this map and for each?
Sorry, did you write something in the chat? Okay.
Map.
Yeah. Map versus for each. Map is basically, both of them actually taken a callback, and the callback has, the callback will be given arguments, three main arguments. The element itself, the index, and the array itself, right? And that callback will be applied to each and every one of the elements in the array, that these methods are called on. But the main difference is map returns, map returns a new array, um, after performing each of the operations on all the elements, while for each does not return any kind of result. It's just a procedure. It's just a method basically. It's an operation on the array itself, while map is an operation that returns a new array.
Okay.
So the elements of the new array that map gives are basically the result of the callback method, uh, that's applied on each of the elements.
Okay.
Whatever is returned in the callback, that is the result. That will be replaced by that will replace the original element and be given as a new array.
And which version of React you have used?
The latest version, mostly 16 React 16 point something that's running right now.
Okay. So mostly you were working with the functional components.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you worked with the class components?
I have, but I'm not as proficient in class components as I am in functional components. I mean, I can try any questions you have. I know, what the state, what the life cycle methods are, how method binding works in class components, and all
Okay.
that. But it's still, I still prefer using hooks over all this class component structure.
Okay. So what are stateful components and stateless components?
Stateful components are any component that has internal state, right? Any component that basically, as I said, has internal state and renders different output based on the internal state. And the state, the definition of state is basically something that is mutable over a period of time, over the usage of the component or the application. But
Okay.
a state component is basically something that varies its output based on the state of the application, the component. Whereas stateless component is, it doesn't have any internal state. It's just the product of a stateless component is, it's like a pure function of, not pure component, but a pure function. Any inputs you give, it gives you the same result.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is prop drilling and how we can avoid it?
Right. Prop drilling is basically, whenever so let's say there's a prop, there's some data that needs to be passed down to, let's say 6 generations of children, right? And there's a component, there's a root component, and the children of its children of children of its child. That there's one component inside all that hierarchy that needs that data, but there's nothing, none of the other components in the middle need it. So even in that case, you have to pass that prop to each and every child of the root parent, in hopes that, in anticipation that one of the children might need it, one of the grandchildren or one of the predecessor ancestors might need it. I'm sorry, future generations might need it. So that's called prop drilling, and we can avoid it by using. Now we can avoid it by using React context.
Okay. So you have used the context API?
Yeah, I have used context API, but not extensively. I've actually opted to use. Initially, we started with Redux, but then nowadays we're using Sustand a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the difference between a client-side caching and server-side caching?
Sure. So client-side caching is basically any data that we pull from an API, from an endpoint. the browser caches or we cache it, and maybe the local storage or the index DB or anything, any storage mechanism. And whenever the user tries to hit the API, the exact same API again, we don't actually hit the client, we don't actually hit the API to the server. Basically, we just return the same data based on some criteria, basically. So we can set, we can set timers, we can set expiration dates for the cache, we can invalidate the cache after a given amount of time. There's a lot of different principles that we can follow when validating or invalidating cache. Right, so fetch while stale, and there's a lot of different nomenclature surrounding that as well. But this is the basis of client-side caching. You store the result of an API endpoint on the device itself, and whenever the user tries to access the same endpoint, you'll return the result that's stored on the device, not actually hitting the server. Whereas server-side caching is basically any operation that's that is executed, any operation that any endpoint that is hit, the result of that operation is actually stored in some kind of key value or readily accessible memory. Basically, it can be stored in RAM. For instance, we can use the I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name here. Rabbit and no, not rabbit. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but yeah, there are a lot of different things that can actually use for server-side caching in the memory, in the RAM. And so whenever the user is trying to access the same endpoint again, you don't actually go through the whole process. You don't actually hit the handler itself, the endpoint handler. But rather than going through the endpoint handler, fetching from the database, doing all sorts of operations, we just we just return the cache value for that endpoint directly to the client. Hello.
Okay. Can you tell me, like, in what kind of scenarios you can go for server-side caching, and in what kind of scenarios or use cases you can go for client side?
So for yeah, is there a question more? Is there more to the question, or is that the whole question?
I just want any one example in which kind of scenario you will go for which.
All right, sure. So if in any case where the user is actually, the data that's being returned from the endpoint is tailor suited to the user, or the API, the data that's being returned is specific to the user itself, then in that case, it's better to use client-side caching. But in cases where for instance, let's say the Amazon homepage, if it was not tailor suited to the user, right? Amazon homepage does actually do some customization based on the user, but let's ignore that. In cases where hitting a particular endpoint gives us the same result for no matter who is hitting the endpoint. Excuse me. In those cases, it's better to have server-side caching.
Okay, I have sent you a link in the chat. It's basically a code sandbox link.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay, so it's a simple React one, and you have only one object.
Okay.
So object is basically a simple JSON nested object, which is basically the folder structure. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
how we will having folder structure. Okay,
Mhm.
so what you need to do is when you are given a dynamic JSON data, something like that, you
Mhm.
need to print the folders structure, like name, and if it contains, like, no, the folder may contain again folders and files.
Mhm.
Again, folder can contain folders and files, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay. So basically, if it is have items, that means it is a
Mm-hmm.
folder.
Okay.
If it doesn't have item means it's a simple file.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So I have sent you one more snippet like how the structure should be printed when you iterate over the object.
I see. Okay. Okay.
So
Actually, copy this over to this. Okay. Got it.
so
So folder one, there's inside folder one, there's file 11, file 12, folder 11. I see.
yeah,
Got it.
so that's how the sample should look when you know
Mhm.
given the dynamic folder structure nested object.
Okay. So what do I do here? So do I
Yeah, you
make it
can
visible on the screen?
yeah you can simply write the function though it will simply come.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
The-
Sorry.
So whatever the second div is there, right? From there you can write your own function, or if you want to write separate function as well, you can write. No issues with that.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I can write it here. I can write it here. But is it okay if I create my own components?
Yes, yes, it's fine. That's fine.
All right, sure. So uh, I'm gonna create a component called uh, just it. I'll call it free item. Right. Um, in this, I have some data. Uh, well, instead of data, let's say name items. Right. Okay. What I will do is this is a component, so I'll return update. Okay, and inside the question, I think the okay. So initially, I'm just printing out the names of the top level components. That's what I'll do. And so since we have the what's the name files, right? So okay. This is the initial structure that I can expect to print, but it looks like there's an issue. Okay.
Uh, Actually,
This is not being.
you should get that header itself, the whatever objects we have, the folder structure.
Uh,
This folder structure should have printed. Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm actually looking for.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, okay. Can you refresh this one, the browser one? Not that one here, in the right one. Yeah.
Okay, got it. I see. It's just caches for some reason.
Okay.
All right. So now I can see it. It says folder 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So these are the top level names of the folders. Okay. Um, and so what I'm going to do is now that I have these items. That's what I'll write here. Right. So we have this here.
Okay. Okay. So, what is the difference between export and export default?
Export default, basically you can actually directly, I mean, export default is it's an unnamed export. You can actually export it as anything else over here as well. I mean, no, we can actually name them. So the main difference here is in export default, you can actually import the whole that function directly from like this. But if you use the export, just export and not export default, you have to write it like this. It's you're importing an object itself, where export default exports the object that you've mentioned, that you've given itself.
Okay. Anything else?
Um, no, I mean, no, that's far as I'm concerned. This is the most use case that I actually use from export and export default. I mentioned this in terms of practical uses as well.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also the key here that
For
um,
default ones, you can import with any name. It doesn't matter the name
I mean,
function.
even yeah, that's what I was going to say earlier. But even for ones that you actually do it like this, you can do it like
Yeah, but
so.
for import, the normal export, you should know the name of the function you are trying to import.
Right, right. Okay, got it, got it. I see what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
I see what you're trying. Okay.
Okay, I'm done with the questions. A few things I wanted to ask is, have you worked with any unit testing frameworks?
Yeah, just.
Just
Mhm.
okay. For both backend and front end?
For front end mostly, actually.
Okay,
I mean, for backend as well, but the backend tests, I have overseen the backend tests and not actually written them.
okay,
But I don't think it's actually much different from the front end and back end tests, right? So it's just basically you setting up the test, and then once the tests are done, you expect some result where you're getting some of the result. And so it either fails or it succeeds. You just go and debug based on that. So yeah.
okay.
So is it that's it for this folder structure? I mean, we can actually
Yeah, no,
implement something like
yeah,
if you
nothing,
click on
nothing.
it, it'll expand, it'll close. We
No,
can do
no,
something
no,
like that as well.
no, 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 not required.
All right. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Um.
I'm done with the questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Uh, no, no, nothing particular.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Yeah, you do. You do.